Okay, so we need to talk about this. I need other people's eyes on this because it appears as though the sun is imprinting landmarks or the shape of different land masses in coronal holes prior to major earthquakes. And I follow geophysicist Stefan Burns, who you guys have seen me post some stuff about him every now and then. But he says, and he shows and has proven that there's a very, very strong correlation between large coronal holes in the sun and right before, usually in the geo-effective positioning to Earth, usually like 3 days before a major earthquake. And the coronal holes have taken the form of the land masses, from what I've seen, up to 10 days prior to the earthquake. And which brings us to the recent 8.8 earthquake in Russia. And the coronal hole 11 days prior, depending on which time zone you're in, took on the form of not only the number 7, but the Kamchatka Peninsula, which was the epicenter of the earthquake. So what is going on? And I found other weird things too. So let's get into it. So you know how like when you're little or even now, there's those magic eye pictures that we would always do, and they had them in newspapers where there would be a picture and you had to find the hidden images within that one picture? I believe that's what the sun is doing, or somebody is acting upon the sun to do that and have events manifest in picture form or energy in the sun's imaging that NASA and the government put out, or at least that we are able to see when we look at those different websites and we see the imaging of the sun. So if everything around us is consciously connected and everything is being acted upon energetically by each conscious entity within the whole, it makes perfect sense that our surroundings would take shape in different energetic imprints depending upon the energy in that area, or even conscious manifestations of our own thoughts acting upon our environment. So you tie that into synchronicities and how the whole conscious universe is constantly trying to talk to itself, if you want to call it that, or each individual piece of itself in order to bring everything back into alignment to maintain homeostasis, which is why people say you can never put a limit on signs and synchronicities or how answers and information come to us from the divine consciousness and from all consciousness as a whole. I've seen synchronicities or signs in cloud formations, license plate numbers, like a random thing that somebody says to you at the grocery store, a sign you drive by when you go down a detoured road because the one that you were originally going to go down was closed, but it took you past a sign that gave you an answer that you had been searching for if you're looking for those signs. If you're not looking for those signs, you're going to miss everything, which is why you need to be consciously aware of your surroundings and things that are being shown to you at all times. So my question is the sun giving us signs in energetic imprints prior to events, or is somebody else like NASA purposely putting these shapes into their visuals for ritualistic purposes? So here on July 16th, you can see the number 7 on the left-hand side of the sun. On the right, you see the solar synoptic map, which is on NOAA's website. And that is supposed to map out in more detail what you're seeing on the left-hand side. On July 18th, it takes the shape of the Kamchatka Peninsula and is centered on July 19th, Earth-facing, that is.
This one has a nice fat chunk cutting right through the equator. It also has a part right above, right below. We're going to get hit by that high-speed stream, and that's going to happen in just a few days because we notice that it's right now Earth center and the geoeffective position is more about here. These high-speed streams also have open magnetic field, so the magnetic field streams out rather than looping back in close to the surface. Eventually, of course, loops back in and connects in some way. But in general, it has this magnetic field that will connect strongly to Earth's magnetic field and create this direct flow of very high velocity particles from the sun to the Earth. This is number 4. And these coronal holes have been on the sun now really since like October. This one down there has had 11 rotations. Normally they die out after a few. They can last for a while, but since October, it's going to be nearly a year. We're coming up on like the 1-year anniversary for this one that's now rotating to the far side. This guy's been there for a while too. They transmutate, they change, they open up, they close. This is a part of the solar corona, the outermost atmosphere of the sun, which is deficient in plasma. It has a lower temperature because that magnetic field is causing the ions to constantly flow out. So it shows up dark on this 211 angstrom view, but this is not a hole directly through the sun. It's just our imagery of the solar corona highlighting that change in density and temperature. But it does show that magnetic field configuration. And it's geoeffective in this position because that's how the solar wind spirals out. And so at this point here, it's actually spiraling like that. Whereas here, and if Earth is right in the center, right? Whereas in this position right there, it's spiraling like this and will hit the Earth. So that's why we're a couple days away from that. There's some interesting numerology with this. You see here very clearly the number 7. This will be geoeffective around the 25th, and that is 25. That's the number 7. We're in the year 2025. If you take out the 20, 25, that's 7. And as well as that, we had this big Earth shift start on 7/7 with Uranus shifting into Gemini.
And of course, it's not just solar. There's certain planetary convergences that play a factor in large earthquakes. I think specifically Mars and Saturn from a few astrologers that I've heard speak on this. Obviously, not all cases are the same. But this is 3 days prior to the earthquake, and the 7 has now moved out of view and shows a different coronal hole, but it's the same picture in reverse. And number 7 is the country code for Russia, to tie in to the numerology even more. And when I look at this, I see that it took on the shape of the Kamchatka Peninsula. And I just happened to notice that when I was Googling Kamchatka Peninsula, and the picture I saw in the images of the Google that pulled up, I was like, oh my God, that's a number 7, which is what made me look into it even more.
There's the sun, right there's the Earth. Oh, look at that. Like Mercury is about to go conjunct the sun from that inner orbital position. So that's an inferior conjunction. We call both the inferior conjunction or the superior conjunction a cazimi. That's just a general term. But we see here on the 31st of July is when that goes exact. And that is when we have this coronal hole high-speed stream impact around that time window of July 30th to the 31st and maybe even into August 1st.
So the next earthquake that came into my head was the Turkey-Syria, mainly because it was 7/7 and this one was 8/8. And here I just confirmed that on the solar synoptic maps, the black areas represent coronal holes. So these are northern hemisphere coronal holes seen the day of the Turkey earthquake, February 6, 2023. And you could see it's the shape of a T in the upper one. And then this is 2 days prior. The coronal hole on the synoptic map is much more visible than it is on the actual picture that they've posted on the website. So I've noticed you have to check both, because sometimes it doesn't show up on the picture, but it shows up on the synoptic map. And this was the little image below the T, and it somewhat, in my opinion, takes on the shape of that landmass where they said the epicenter was. Both the Russia and Turkey earthquakes had the coronal holes centered 3 days prior to the earthquake. Here you see it on the right. That's the third day, when it's in that positioning towards the right hand side, that's when it's in the position to directly hit Earth, according to Stefan. Now this is different. This was on 8/8, quote unquote, Lion's Gate. I just happened to notice this when I was looking at a picture of 8/8 because I was going through all the different dates, and I saw a lioness's head, and at first I was like, that's an eagle, and then I was like, wait, maybe it's a phoenix because of the fire. And it looked like a mountain range below it. This is what I'm talking about with the hidden pictures and energetic imprints of possibly what is taking place or going to take place, since everything takes place energetically / spiritually first and then manifests into the physical. So in these pictures, I sharpened it all the way to 100%, and I did the definition so it would stand out even more, so I could not sound crazy and you guys could actually see the pictures too. And then I was trying to think, what would that represent? So I Googled quickly 3 peaks, because at first I was like, that looks like a 3-peak mountain range to me. And then I'm like, 2 lionesses. Is there any twin peaks that are associated with female lions? And this is what I found. Yes, there is a pair of twin peaks known as the Lions located in the North Shore Mountains of British Columbia, Canada. They are known as the Twin Sisters. And there was a Lions Gate Bridge named in their honor. Lions Gate, this is when the picture showed up on Lions Gate 8/8, or what we call it anyway. This area is part of the Cascade volcanoes, which is another thing. I was like, maybe because it's all about, like, the phoenix represents fire, like death and rebirth, resurrection. I was like, maybe the mountain range is volcanic because of all the volcanic activity that's going on right now, and how there's a lot of correlations with sunspots, or coronal holes rather, and volcanic activity also, aka earthquakes. And I don't know, this mountain range looks pretty dead on to me. And this is a different one. This is the 3 Sisters, and it's a group of volcanoes that, according to Google, fits my description of a 3 mountain range. So this is another observation separate from the twin peaks in Canada. And this is located in Oregon, and it's also part of the Cascade Range. The name of these peaks are Faith, Hope, and Charity. Here it says neither North or Middle Sister have erupted in the last 14,000 years, and it's considered unlikely they will ever erupt again. And if it was this landmass, I was just thinking, I wonder if, like, the phoenix and the 2 lionesses together were symbolically saying, like, that they're, like, one's licking the other, like, waking the other up, like, they're beginning to wake up. That was just one thought that I had. And this is other information on them saying those 2 were last active 10 to 12,000 years ago. So I don't know. These are just 2 examples of things that I thought it could be a representation of. Now, when I was flipping through the different pictures of the sun for each date, on the 13th, I noticed this. So I zoomed in because I saw, like, what looked like an eye, and that caught my attention. And then I'm like, wait, that kind of looks like a fish. So I did an outline of it. And when I outlined the 2 figures, because I'm like, one looks like a head and the other like a fish. And after I got done outlining it, I was like, that kind of looks like Donald Trump, which I completely wasn't even thinking of him. I don't know what you guys think, but I would love to hear what your thoughts are on that picture and what the representation of it could be. So I included the screenshot times for a reason, because when I first saw this, it was at 11:27 p.m. and that's when I screenshotted it. And if you can look at the below time, it was 8:13 UT, I'm EST, time zone. And then I noticed 3 minutes later at 11:30 p.m., they changed the picture and the time backtracked. And then 2 minutes later at 11:32, when I checked, they switched the picture back to the first picture that they uploaded, which I was like, giving like crazy girl social media changing her profile picture every other day. I'm like, what is going on here? So this third time where they uploaded the first picture, they then put a headline, "A southern hemisphere coronal hole is detected." And the next day, when I went to look it up again, they had taken that picture down and it wasn't available. And then an hour and a half later, they uploaded another picture with a different time. And this time, a completely different visual on that area. And it looks like either the fish has teeth or it's now a mammal. And there's like a horn coming out of the side, which I thought was interesting. But this is going back to the first picture. And again, I kept checking and the data's not available for that day, and it still isn't. So I went back to see when that picture first started to show up. So it looks like on the 10th, on the far left-hand side, you can see it starting to become visible. This is the 11th. So as it's rotating, on the 12th, it's more visible to that picture that I originally saw on the 13th. Here it is again on the 13th. And now this is the 14th, which is like, they're like eating each other's face. I honestly don't know I didn't get any downloads as to what this could possibly refer to as far as like an event or something like that. So I'm totally like open and wanting to hear everybody's ideas on this. So who knows what the significance is, but there is some sort of significance to it because everything is significant. Everything is tied together. And it appears they blacked it out at one point, and it shows like glitches in the time as it's rotating. Like it pauses on certain times, which obviously are significant since everything is numerically patterned in this matrix. So this is what I have for now. I have other stuff as far as like the gematria and tying it to other events. But again, like all events are correlated together, specifically like major earth events, like large earthquakes, volcanic eruptions and stuff like that. So again, I'd love to know like what everybody else has to say and what you guys see as far as these pictures go.